men who identify as being more feminine, and this is good also for women listening, because there was this article written, okay, and I want to be really candid about this. I grew up in a collectivist society where, you know, like for example in Mexico, and I love Mexico so much because it's very similar to India. I think Mexico has a very healthy energy of masculine and feminine. You look at the women as well and how they dress up to value their bodies, whatever their body looks like. They dress up to appreciate themselves. They dress up to show off their like beautiful hair and their bodies and their culture, everything else. The men, and don't get me wrong, everybody has their own bullshit going on, but the men here are more, in my opinion, healthy of masculine. And it looks like to North American men that they might be feminine kind of guys, because you'll see their arms around each other, you'll see them hugging each other a lot. But these guys are safe in it. They don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. So when you go to a birthday, if you go to like, I was dating this girl once in America, and we went to like a park, and there was all these like Mexican families, and she said to me, she's like, I look at Mexican men and I'm like, I always want my husband to be that way. Because my dad never took me around like running and playing and enjoying all the time. But all of these men come back tired from work or whatever they are. First thing they love to do is play with their kids. They love to pick them around, take them around, like just show them. And for me, that's such a strong identity of a strong masculine. You're allowing your emotions to be fed by this beautiful little being that's full of fucking emotion, which is the child. And so you're allowing yourself to have it. You're not denying yourself of it. You're not working all night fucking long and saying, I need to make extra money. Like, that's bullshit. Like having... I apologize, but I never came from a culture of having 3 jobs, of like doing something, working all night. No. My friend, who was this girl who had like she had a wounded masculine energy, she was telling me her partner in the US used to work all holidays because he used to make 2.5 times the money. I'm like, so what if you made a fucking $1 billion, dude? Like, how stupid is it that on Christmas you with nobody in your family because you're working? In New Year's, you're just working all the time because people pay you more. You're a slave to conditioning. You're not a slave to your own choices now. You're not even like part of your own conditioning and beauty and everything you want to have. And so coming back to like the masculine side, a man has to be disciplined about where he's being wounded. And he has to be very disciplined and very structured about where he's stepping into the wounded side. For example, if a man's noticing that he's shaming or judging, you know, a woman, or he's shaming and judging anybody, even a child, he has to be disciplined enough to pull himself back. He has to be strong enough to take accountability. Accountability and discipline are actually very strong masculine concepts. He has to take accountability for how his wounds are showing up on his family. Alcoholism is a very strong way where that doesn't happen, where a man who's going through his own trauma completely absolves himself of accountability. So when he drinks, he takes it out on his family or people around him. And that's the very basis or example of how a human being or a man is not taking accountability for his own wounds. So when a man takes accountability for his own wounds, he's not affected by the wounds of another. So if his wife or his child or his family comes up to him with their wounds, he's able to hold fort. He's able to ground himself. He's able to support themselves and not take it personally. A wounded man would shame, judge, and project, and would also feel victimized and take things very personally. So if, you know, you want to step into as a man, and I'm going to come back to like the feminine and the women in just a sec, but if you want to step into more as a man, being more masculine, it doesn't just mean like, oh, go stand in front of the fucking mirror, like grow beard big, have like one of those fucking man buns or whatever else. It doesn't mean that. It means prioritize discipline, structure, and focus in your life. But bring those back to you. Allow and see where accountability of where you need to show up for yourself is important, where you need to show up to take care of yourself, your body, your surroundings. I think always, it doesn't matter whether you are the breadwinner of a family or not. I think a man's responsibility is always to keep his eyes open to take care of people around him. Whether it's your neighbors, whether it's your cousins, whether it's whatever. You don't have to pay and take care of everybody. That's not what I'm talking about. But when people are in need, you need to be able to have the strength to show up fearlessly. And that's why a woman, this is so amazing, right? A strong feminine trusts a strong masculine, not looking at him beat up other people. But she unconsciously, this is so powerful, a strong feminine unconsciously observes a masculine to see how does he show up for people in his life. Does he give a good example of how he can be protective, a good example of how he can show up, a good example of how he can be supportive, a good example of how he can take accountability? And if that's true, she then opens up what we call in India, what they call the yoni, which is basically like her flower. And like, you know, if you had to put it in your physiological terms, of vagina, but it's a yoni is basically feminine energy. She opens up her feminine energy to trust him. and without which she doesn't. Without which she doesn't feel safe. So safety is the number one thing the feminine energy needs. So if you want to step more into your masculinity as a man, you have to be able to provide that safety. How can you provide that safety if you're fucking judging, shaming, or criticizing her? And if you dare abuse her, physically, verbally, or emotionally, my opinion, I don't want to say you, but it is the weakest man who does it. The weakest man is one who has to suppress anything that's weaker than him. Anything. And I think that's just a concept, unfortunately, that wounded parts of society give us. So, and Hector, that's a good question where you said an interesting concept, because if a man is too much of a giver, it seems to look feminine. So ask yourself, why is the man giving? Is the man giving so that he is validated? Is the man giving so he looks good? Is the man giving so that he's approved of? Because all of those are what victimized concepts. Your value is not enough unless you think you're giving and people approve of you. A strong man will give and not want appreciation. I had this other conversation with this Hector, and I know, but you have to draw boundaries. That's where, like, just saying an emotional giver, that's where you have to step into the masculine. Don't let that feminine side of you just like ride across, because then you're not going to live in your masculine energy. But this other friend of mine who's like very, like, you know, beautiful and very feminine, she was talking about how she was in a relationship with someone who like really adored her and loved her and everything else, and he would basically say like a whole list of compliments to her and say like, you're so beautiful, I love you, blah blah blah, I love your hair, I love this, I love that, and she would say thank you. And what's interesting is he would wait for a return of the compliment. But when it didn't come in, so Drika, Sheen, I know you just brought this up, so when it wouldn't come in, he would feel upset. And so he'd come back to her and he said, you know, you could say those things back to me too, right? How does that come across to anybody? Does that look fucking attractive? If someone is asking to be validated? If someone's asking to be approved of just because they've done it? So then basically their compliment to you may not even be true, they may just be giving it to you so they can get something back in return. And especially as a man, if you're doing that, the masculine does not need to be validated or appreciated. It needs to be strong and confident in its own value. So when we had a conversation, me and her had a conversation, I was telling her, I was like, you know, wow, your energy is so beautiful, and like, you know, I love your hair and your creativity. She's an amazing artist. And I was like, wow, your art makes me fall in love with your energy because it's so feminine. It's amazing, and it just draws me in. And I went on about it for 20 minutes. And she's like, oh, thank you, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, you know, you're really awesome too, right? And I was like, yeah, that's cool. Don't worry. And she's like, wait, what? And I said, dude, I didn't compliment you to compliment me back. And she's like, but isn't that part of the process? I was like, no, that's not. And I said to her, I know what I am. I deliver my value every day. I wake up and I look at the mirror and I have to convince and tell myself and show myself the value I have. I mean, you're amazing, but you don't need to tell me what I am. I know. So even if you told me I was shitty, I wouldn't care. If you told me I was amazing, it would affect me, it would help me, it would make me feel nice, but I wouldn't depend on it. So that's why for the masculine, you need to give yourself that like internal security to know what you are. And I know, Hector, I just want to bring up, I mean, I'm in this space where it's my job to like to give people emotionally, right? So I have an even bigger excuse to say, but I love giving and it's so nice. At what cost? It dries you out, it wears you out, so you're not using the masculine to protect your feminine energy, so you're wearing it out, you're giving it away constantly, you're losing it, you don't have enough for yourself, and you're not even drawing a boundary to show security. The most attractive thing I've done like with women is when they've come up to me and they said like, hey, let's do blah, 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 and I've been able to say, I'm going to be honest with you, I have this thing to work on right now, but I'm available at this time and I would love to take you out here. But I can't just come out at this particular point in time. Or I can't just listen to your problems right now. Or I can't just work on this with you right now. I will give you the time, but I have to finish working on and doing what I have to do. See? And you said you often get wounded after that. So when I've drawn that masculine energy to protect that feminine energy I was giving out, they love it. And they're like, wow, this guy is like able to draw this boundary, but with security, with honesty, with integrity, and not out of like fear, not out of saying like, you know, fuck you, you know, you're asking too much of me, etc. Hey, and welcome to the Inner Yats YouTube page. If you like our content, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button so that you get more of these amazing videos that keep coming your way.